DreAllDay.com.
Dre Baldwin, DreAllDay.com. It is that time of year again. If you don't know what time it is, check your watch, check your phone. It is NBA playoff time. And even though I don't make most of my materials not about basketball on the day-to-day anymore, I still follow the NBA. Of course, Miami Heat play down here in sunny Miami. It is raining today. It's the first rainy day we've had in like 3 weeks. We need it. The trees and the grass got to grow. But it is time. I do this every single year. For those of you who don't know, I do a preview of the NBA playoffs. And what I'm going to do here this year is we're going to do 2 videos here. So part 1 and part 2, we're going to talk about each conference. I'm going to talk about, first of all, we're going to talk about quickly the trashy teams that didn't make the playoffs. Then the sacrificial lambs who made the play-in games. And then we're going to talk about my picks for the first round, what I think is going to happen at least through the first round. And then I'll probably do videos later on either for the second round. If I don't do the second round, then I'll definitely do like conference finals and then the NBA finals as usual. So hope everybody's had a good year, good season, good basketball season. Basketball fans, I know all y'all fans of different teams and all that. Of course, any comments, questions about anything that I share here, you go ahead and leave it in the comments. I probably don't even have to tell you that. So let's get to it. We're going to start on the East Coast. If I got to choose the coast, I got to choose the East. I live out there, so don't go there. So let's get to it. First of all, let's talk about the trashy teams from the bottom up. The Orlando Magic. I don't know what we even need to say about the Orlando Magic. I mean, they're in a rebuilding phase. They've been in a rebuilding phase for a little bit of time here, and I think they do have some promising pieces. I think they might have a couple promising pieces. I think Jonathan Isaac can be great defensively. Cole Anthony, showed that he could be the guy at least on the trashy team. Now, can he be a guy on a good team? That remains to be seen. They got some pieces to work with. I don't think anything else I need to say about Orlando. We ain't giving them too much more airtime. Orlando and the players on Orlando, y'all want airtime, y'all got to win some games. Detroit Pistons, same thing. I didn't get to see too much of Cade Cunningham, but from what I read and what I heard, I got a video that actually I got saved in my YouTube of that channel called Thinking Basketball. I like their stuff. I like the stuff they put out. They got a video on Cade that I didn't watch yet, but I saved it. So I want to watch it so I can get a feel for what his game is like. I haven't really seen him, and I don't watch college basketball, but I heard that he is a promising piece for the future. So there's something positive for you Detroit fans. Indiana Pacers. Now, they traded away Sabonis, and they got back Tyrese Halliburton, who he's a guy who I've seen, and I like, at least the bit that I've seen of him. Again, he hasn't been on any good teams yet, so I haven't seen a ton of them, but I've heard good stuff about him. So that's a promising piece that the Pacers have. Is he alone enough to make the Pacers a good team next season? No. So the Pacers, y'all going to need more. And there's something positive that I said about you. They got some other players who are good too. I mean, everybody in the NBA is good, but this team is not good. You're 25 and 57. We're not giving y'all no more airtime. Now, a 10-game jump from that was a 35 and 47 Washington Wizards. Now, we know Bradley Beal, their best player, ended up getting injured, and I was actually hoping Bradley Beal ended up being the guy that ended up on the Sixers this year. But we're going to get to the Sixers momentarily. We're going to get them a good amount of time. Now, even with Bradley Beal, however, Brad Beal, if you're watching this, listen, if Brad Beal is your best player of your team, the best your team can probably do is you'll make the play-in game, and then you're going to get your ass kicked either in the play-in game or you're going to lose in the first round. Now, Brad Beal, you've been the guy on Washington for a little bit of time now. I'm not speaking out of turn and saying this. This is what has actually happened in your career. Now, I know the other players around you matter. Last year you had Russell Westbrook, who was actually pretty good last year, and y'all were no fodder for the actual good teams. So this is where the Wizards are at. I think they need to, I know Bradley Beal wants to stay in Washington. They need to get a player who's probably a little bit better than Brad Beal. They're going to go to a higher level. I don't think if Brad Beal is your best player, I don't think you're going that much further. Even though Brad Beal is very good, I don't think you're going much further than where they've gone if he's the best player that you have. They might need to trade him and start all over, or they need to find a new mix. But what they got going right now is going to get them, at the best, going to make the play-in game. Next, New York Knicks. Goddamn New York. I love New York. I love New York City. I love Manhattan. I love Madison Square Garden. I love Times Square. I've been to New York 100 times. Every time I go to New York, I still like to go to Times Square and look around all the bright lights in the big city. But goddamn, the Knicks, what the hell happened to y'all? Last year, y'all had this great team. Y'all were what, the number 4 seed, number 4, number 5 seed, even though you blew it and lost to the Hawks in the first round. Y'all were a good team. Julius Randle had a career year. You had other good pieces around you. And y'all basically had the same team this year, and y'all were 37 and 45. What the hell happened? The 5th seed this year in the East won 48 games. So y'all fell off by basically, let's just say, a 10-game pace when it comes to being the number 5 seed. I don't know what the hell happened to the New York Knicks this year. Well, we do know what happened. Julius Randle didn't have as great a year as he had last year. Who's the next best player on the Knicks? Somebody help me out. Who's the second best player on the New York Knicks? I'm guessing maybe RJ Barrett. I've heard good things about Barrett. People who watch more basketball than me said that this guy's a keeper. He's a guy who's serious about his game. He works on his game. He wants to get better. He wants to improve X, Y, Z. I mean, how far are you going to go if those are your 2 best players, Julius Randle and RJ Barrett? I think we already know. You're going to make the first round, maybe. They didn't make it this year. And you're going to lose. Then you got a guy like, let's say, Derrick Rose, who's on the other side of his peak, but Derrick Rose is still a good player who can get in and score points. But yeah, the Knicks need some help. The Knicks gonna need to do some rebuilding. One thing that has been rumors that the Knicks might try to do, that I hope they don't do, is try to get like Russell Westbrook this offseason. Don't get Russell Westbrook, Knicks. Y'all didn't try that, getting the retread guys who kind of who are already past their primes and just trying to pad their stats and look great playing in New York. Do not do that. If y'all gonna get somebody, get a young guy who you can build around, like a superstar young guy you can build around, or rebuild and get rid of everybody and all the contracts that you got. But New York fans, I don't know what to tell y'all. Shout out to New York, but y'all in trouble. y'all got a little bit of ways to go. I know if y'all would have got Zion in the draft a couple years ago, who knows? This whole situation might be different. Zion might actually be playing basketball rather than whatever it is he's doing right now. Anyway, that's it for the trash team. Terrible trash teams. Now let's get to the somewhat trash teams. These are the teams that made the play-in game. The Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte had a winning record, 43-39. So shout out to Michael Jordan. He finally has that team looking in a positive direction. You got LaMelo, who I think by all accounts is a pretty good player. A bunch of solid players around him. P.J. Washington, Miles Bridges, who I like a lot. Rozier has been solid on that team. Who else they have on that team? I don't even know. We're not spending too much time talking about the 10 seed, but Charlotte is going in a positive direction, trending in a positive direction. Michael Jordan's the greatest player of all time, and now he's actually getting some traction when it comes to his ownership. So shout out to Michael Jordan and Charlotte. Y'all got some good things going. Y'all, same thing I told the Knicks, I'm telling Charlotte, do not go get some old veteran dude who's just trying to pad his stats and look great playing for a team in which he could be the guy. Don't do that. Don't go get Russell Westbrook. I'm going to tell a bunch of teams, don't go get Russell Westbrook this offseason. Don't do it, Charlotte. I heard they might do it. I don't think they're going to do that. Just keep building on what you got. Y'all got good pieces to start with. Next, the Atlanta Hawks, who are still in the play. I'm recording this on Friday afternoon. So tonight, they actually had it up on the building across the street from me. Atlanta Hawks and Cleveland Cavaliers, the winners, get to play against the Miami Heat, which is their buildings across the street from me. They will play in the first round, whoever wins this game between the Hawks and the Cavs. I'm guessing my pick. Actually, I'll tell you about my pick in a minute. We'll get to that in a second. So, Atlanta Hawks didn't have as great of a season this year as they had last year, but Trae Young had a great year. I think they had too many people on this team. They traded Cam Reddish, and he ended up, I don't know what happened to him. He disappeared into a black hole in New York. I think he was injured a lot. Then they lost Collins, and the Hawks just weren't as good. And the Hawks players in their organization was talking as if they did some amazing thing last year. Listen, y'all beat the Knicks, who are a one-year aberration, as we can see in the first round. Then y'all beat the Sixers because their second best player and all-star Ben Simmons choked. And then y'all got beat the way y'all supposed to get beat by the Milwaukee Bucks in the conference finals. And then the Hawks were talking as if they had won the damn championship last year, and they were complacent because of how great they were the year before. Y'all didn't do anything. You only did something one time. So Hawks, let this season, because even if they win this playing game, you're going to get your ass kicked by Miami, I think. And so I already gave you one of my picks. And so y'all need to wake up. Everybody in Atlanta, y'all need to wake up. Y'all ain't that good. Y'all haven't done anything. Cleveland Cavaliers. They had some injuries. They lost Ricky Rubio, which I think was a big hit for them, and then they had to move everybody else up in the rotation. Kevin Love looking good as a bench guy. Evan Mobley as a rookie, a defensive-focused guy who could be a defensive game changer in this league. They have a lot of good pieces to start with. Darius Garland has been great. They lost Colin Sexton as well. I think Colin Sexton's about to get shipped out, as a matter of fact. That's just my guess. We're not really talking about that right now. But they're going to be playing the Hawks tonight. I'll give you my pick. In that playing game tonight, who's the top seed? So the Cavs lost to Brooklyn. So I guess the Cavs are at home because they were the 8 seed. The Hawks were the 9 seed. Man, this is going to be actually a tough game, but I'm going to have to go with the Hawks just because I think Trae Young is the best player on the court in that game. I think he's the best player on the court. He's better than everybody on the Cavs. And because they have the experience, I haven't done it. And Trae Young is a big game player. I think we all have to agree to that. And nobody on the Cavs, their biggest guys, Kevin Love has been, but none of those other guys, well, Rondo too, but they're not the main guys. The main guys are Garland and Mobley. Those guys haven't played in any big games in their careers yet. They played in one against Brooklyn and got beat the way they were supposed to. So I'm going to go with the Hawks to win the play-in game. So we'll say the Hawks are going to be the 8th seed. So we'll go with that. The Brooklyn Nets, they already won the play-in game, so they are going to be the number 2 seed against the Celtics. So now let's talk about the first round actual matchups and the teams that are actually playing in the playoffs. I already told you 1 versus 8 is the Miami Heat against I'm going to go with the Atlanta Hawks in this game or the Cleveland Cavs. Either way, I'm picking the Heat to win this series. The Heat have a tougher team. They have a very good defensive team. As long as everybody's healthy, they got Bam Adebayo, who is probably their best player overall. If you had to take all their players and put them in a big draft, I think Bam would go first amongst everybody who's on the Heat's roster. Yes, Jimmy Butler's good. Yes, Tyler Hero's good. He's been great as a 6th man this year. He's probably going to win the 6th man award. He have a good roster from top to bottom. Great coaching at Eric Spoelstra. Great town and great city in Miami. I think they will win in the first round. Now, I think the chance that they get beat in the first round would have to be the Hawks, and it had to be a guy like Trae Young just catching fire and just destroying them from all over the place in this series. And the Hawks role players is playing great, playing lights out. But I do not see that happening. The Hawks, I can give them a game, but are they going to beat the Heat in a 7-game series? No, I don't think that's going to happen. The Hawks are good enough to win a couple games, but then I win the series. So that's my number 1, 8 pick is the Miami Heat beating the Atlanta Hawks. Now the Heat, they had that whole dust up with Jimmy Butler on the bench and Udonis Haslem, who seems to get in more fight challenges in actual games his last couple of years of his career. A funny thing, but that's his role, and the Heat love him. He's Heat culture embodied. So yeah, that's all I got to say about the Miami Heat. I think they're going to the second round. So we'll be talking about them in later versions of these videos. The second, number 2 versus number 7. This is a matchup. Boston Celtics against the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the Boston Celtics were a team that didn't look so great at the beginning of the year, but then they found their stride. They got a first-year coach in Udoka. He figured it out. Their defense has been amazing. They've been shutting people down. Jason Tatum has been great. Jaylen Brown has found his spot as kind of like the number 2 guy on that team. Marcus Smart, who's been in trade rumors for years. They kept him. He's been great. He's one of the best defenders in the league. Rob Williams, Time Lord, great defending the rim, and they're saying he might be back for later on in this series. Al Horford is an older guy, but he's been solid for this team. They found their bench. Boston has overall very good team. Now the Brooklyn Nets. What can I say about the Brooklyn Nets? First of all, shout out to Kyrie Irving. He went against the grain with the whole jabbing thing, and don't call it a vaccine because it's not a vaccine. The definition of a vaccine is you're immune to a virus. Nobody's immune to the virus despite all the jabs you put in your arm. So Kyrie went against the jab, and he, quote unquote, technically he won because now he can play in all the games. So shout out to Kyrie for that, and I want to see Kyrie do great just on that alone. Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. I mean, what do we got to say about him? We all know his story and what he's about, one of the best players in the league. However, here's the problem, Brooklyn. And so I got 2 challenges for the city of New York here, including Brooklyn and Manhattan. Brooklyn Nets have 2 players. Brooklyn Nets are a 2-deep roster. Brooklyn Nets is kind of like you and your man go to a gym or to the park to play pickup, and you and your man are good, and then y'all just pick up 3 bums, and the hope is you and your man just play lights out, and y'all can just carry that bum-ass team through the whole day and just keep winning pickup games. That's the Brooklyn Nets right now. They got 2 guys, and they're carrying a whole bunch of, essentially, I'm not even going to call these guys dead weight. They're NBA players. They're capable guys, but these are not guys who would be playing on a whole bunch of good teams. A lot of these guys might not be playing. Andre Drummond would be coming off the bench for the Sixers behind Joel Embiid, who's playing, 40 minutes a game in the playoffs? Maybe 35 because you got Andre Drummond. Seth Curry was playing great with the Sixers, but he's kind of injured right now. He's hampered. LaMarcus Aldridge is older and close to washed. Blake Griffin is older and completely washed to the point that he doesn't even play right now. He doesn't get in the games. Who else do the Brooklyn Nets have on their roster? Who else is playing for Brooklyn? So they got Bruce Brown, who's a good role player, but he's a role player. Who else? They got Nick Claxton, who may play as long as Ben Simmons isn't playing. They got Ben Simmons. Oh, yeah, Ben Simmons. The guy who had mental health issues. As soon as he got traded to Brooklyn, all of a sudden now is back. Now, we ain't got to talk about that anymore. They saying Ben Simmons might come back in the middle of this series. I don't see that happening. If he does, I don't think Ben Simmons is going to be that much of a factor. If indeed his back is hurt, it's hard to play basketball with a hurt back. And if you're rushing back to play basketball with a hurt back, I'm not sure what we can expect from you. So I'm not sure if Ben Simmons makes much of a difference in this series. What the Brooklyn Nets need is some damn offense and some scoring and another option outside of Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Ben Simmons ain't that. Ben Simmons is a defensive option. He can help on Jason Tatum, but other than that, I'm not seeing it. And if you got a bad back, are you going to be your best defensive player? Even if Ben Simmons came back right now, gangbusters, ready to go play, I do not think Brooklyn has as much of a chance in this series as it might look like on paper. I think Boston is way better than them. They have a much more full roster, and if Time Lord comes back, then they definitely have their full roster. I don't think Brooklyn is really going to be that much of a challenge for them in this series. The only chance they have is the scenario that I gave you. Kevin Durant and his man Kyrie Irving, they come in there, they go gangbusters, they both score 35 a game, and they're going to have to do that 4 times to win this series. They are not going to win this series without that. They both have to score maybe 30, 40 each game that Brooklyn is going to win in this series because they don't really have another super reliable offensive player. I think the Celtics can win this series in 5 if they're serious. And they have a lot of Celtics. Actually, this team has a good amount of playoff experience. We don't think about it like that, but they do. They went to the conference finals, one either last year or the year before, I can't remember. They've been in the playoffs a couple years here in a row. This team, they actually have the experience. I think they can beat them in 5. I think the Celtics can win this series in 5. Well, yeah, the Heat series, I'm going to go with the Heat in 6 over the Hawks. And if it's the Cavs, they might sweep them. And this series, I'm going to go Boston in 5. But I'll hedge that and say maybe in 6. Boston in 5 if they get serious. In 6 if KD or Kyrie Irving scores like 100 points in one of the games, 40, 50, 60 points in the game, which is very possible with those two guys. They're both capable of doing it. So this could possibly go 6. But I'm going to say Celtics in 5 here. I think the Celtics are going to stomp out Brooklyn. I don't think Brooklyn is as good as they appeared to be on paper. And the whole super team thing that Brooklyn put together, that didn't turn out too well. But hey, they might win this series and make me eat my words, but that's what I'm going with right now. Then let's go to the number 3-6 series, which is the Milwaukee Bucks defending champs against the Chicago Bulls. Now, the Chicago Bulls, I was doubtful of. I may admit, I was doubtful of the Chicago Bulls when they put this team together in the offseason. They signed DeMar DeRozan, and I was like, DeMar DeRozan? Or what does that mean? Does that mean this team is supposed to be good because they got DeMar DeRozan? Yeah, I know he can score 20, 25 points a game, but so what is this team going to do with that? But they also signed, which I didn't pay enough attention to. They had Patrick Williams, who's a great defensive player and role player. They signed Alex Caruso, who's a great defender and role player. They signed Lonzo Ball, who's a great defender and role player. Those are the kind of players that make teams gel and help them win. They also got Vucevic, who's a good scorer, but he's kind of a guy who will get you 20 points on a trashy team. He did it for years in Orlando, and he did whatever he did here in Chicago this year. I don't think he's Nikola Vucevic is not the difference between you winning and losing. That's the way that I'll put it. He's a good player, but he is not the difference between winning and losing. He's the player who's going to get his stats no matter what team you put him on. But signing DeRozan has had a great year. He's going to make an all-NBA team this year, and he should. The Lakers should have got him. We're going to talk about the Lakers in the next video. But the Bulls finished the season, they kind of crawled over the finish line. They did not look good at the end of the season. They don't have Lonzo Ball, who they absolutely need if they're going to be a good team. They are not the same team without him, and they're going to be against the defending champs. I have already said this. I said this a couple of years ago. Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best player in the NBA. He's the best player in the league. The Chicago Bulls don't have anyone who can guard Giannis. The Milwaukee Bucks have their complete roster. Brook Lopez is back. They got their roster. They got the best player in the league who has a case for being the MVP this year. He's probably not going to get it, but he has a case for being the MVP this year. I don't think the Bulls really are going to put up that much of a fight in this series. They're going to try. They got good players. They're going to give it a shot. They got Zach LaVine. They got the scorers here. And basically, they got the light version of the Brooklyn Nets between DeRozan and LaVine. It's like KD and Kyrie, but the light version, a little bit lighter version, going up against a much better team in the Milwaukee Bucks. I see this going 5. I'm going to go with the best player in the league, Giannis, being serious. The Bucks saying, let's take care of business so we can rest and get ready for the next round when they will be playing the winner of the 2-7 series, which will either be Brooklyn or Boston. Take care of business. I say the Bucks can win this series in 5, stomping these dudes out. If DeRozan and Zach LaVine goes off in a game, then it could go 6, but I'm going to go Bucks in 5 in the first round for that one. Now the 4-5 series. My hometown Philadelphia 76ers traded Ben Simmons and Seth Curry and Andre Drummond for James Harden. a not in his prime anymore James Harden is who they traded for. Now, if we was trading for James Harden, who was averaging 35 a couple of years ago and getting a triple-double and getting 40 and 50 and a triple-double and put up those stats he was like 2-3 years ago in Houston, then I would say, okay, we'll give up those guys to get James Harden because Daryl Morey, the GM, loves James Harden. And, I mean, we know he was the GM in Houston when James was James. James Harden ain't that James Harden anymore. However, at the same time, when James Harden is the best player on your team, you see what happens. You get into a big moment, James Harden doesn't do those James Harden things that he was doing in the regular season. So now he's on a team where he's not the number one guy. Joel Embiid is the number one guy. And Joel Embiid has a case for MVP this year. He might get it. He might not, but he might get it. He has a case. James Harden needs to show up in this series. One challenge, we're playing against the Raptors. The Raptors have all these athletic guys who, James Harden in his own words, he say they junk up the game, they fly around, they got these long athletic dudes. Those are the kind of guys that give James Harden trouble. See, the guys who don't give James Harden trouble are the stiffs who can't keep up with him because he's too quick, and the guards who try to stick with his handle, and his handle is too good. But those long athletic dudes, they give people like James Harden issues. And James Harden is going to be going up against those guys this entire series against Toronto. Good news for the Sixers is they ain't got anybody on Toronto's roster who can guard Joel Embiid, and Joel Embiid is the most dominant center in the Eastern Conference, let's say. So you got Jokic over in the West. So we'll say the most dominant center in the East. He's going to eat these dudes for lunch. Joel Embiid is going to average probably 30, 35 points in this series. The challenge is they're going to double team him. He's got to pass the ball out, and everybody else on the Sixers got to make plays. So James Harden got to make plays. Tyrese Maxey, who's been great, he hasn't made plays. Tobias Harris, who has a tendency to disappear in games. Sometimes I watch the Sixers game, I don't even remember Tobias Harris on the damn team, and they're paying him a lot of money. He got to show up. If he shows up and is playing every game, and the other guys show up, James and Tyrese, this should be I would say a 5 or 6 game series for the Sixers to win. The Raptors are not a walk in the park. They're not a cakewalk, but the Sixers are a better team. They have the best player in Joel Embiid. They might have the second best player in James Harden, depending on how he shows up. And they might have either the 4th or 5th best player after that in Tyrese Maxey and how he plays. So the Sixers should take care of business in this series, but a lot of it's going to depend on James because they're going to double Joel to take the ball out of his hands. The Raptors know they don't have anybody who can guard him. And James Harden got to show up. And who knows what James Harden's going to do in the playoffs. He's choked in the playoffs before, so I don't want to say too much. Sixers, this is a 4 or 5. All right, they can't lose in the first round. Sixers losing in the first round, this is a tragedy. This is an emergency, and there's going to have to be some immediate changes to happen. And Doc Rivers might lose his job, and it ain't going to be his fault. But we traded for a not in his prime anymore James Harden. We gave up a lot to get him. Ben Simmons wasn't playing, but then giving up Curry and Drummond. Drummond was a great backup to Joel, and Curry had great chemistry with Joel. Curry's the perfect player to put with Joel Embiid, similar to, in the same vein as J.J. Redick a few years ago, and we gave him up to get James Harden. All right, James Harden, you can't not show up in this series. He said he's ready to just hoop. There's no pressure. Okay, go out and do your thing. We're going to leave it at that. So those are my picks for the first round. I got the Heat winning in the Heat should win this series in 5 if they take care of business. I'm going to go Boston. I'm going to go Boston in 5 here. All right, so I'm going to go Boston in 5. I'm going to say the Bucks in 5. And I'm going to say the Sixers in 6. Those are my picks for the first round. So I got all the top seeds winning in the first round in the Eastern Conference. And next video I'll put out, I'm putting these both out at the same time. I'm going to do the Western Conference. We'll go over the same thing, trashy teams, play-in teams who are semi-trash teams, and then the actual playoff series, who I think is going to win each round, first rounds. And I'll say this here, who I think is going to win MVP. I think it's probably going to be Jokic. I think he has I think he got the advanced stats. He won MVP last year, but he's been just as good this year, maybe even better. And I know Joel tried to make his case and said, they might hate. I'm gonna think they hate me and they don't give me MVP. I hate when players campaign for individual awards, even though Joel's playing for my hometown team. I hate when players do that. So the basketball guys will frown upon him, and I think Jokic is going to get his back-to-back MVPs. But we'll come back next video, Western Conference. Leave me your comments. Tell me what you think. Work on your game. Dre all day.